Welcome back everyone, Mr. O here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you a rundown on how to create your first part in Onshape. Before we get started, it's very important that you first have an account made with Onshape and you're signed in. This is your dashboard here. This is what it looks like. This is where you can see all the files that you have made or have access to. For example, I've got these shapes right here that I have made, and I can open these shapes up. I also have this other shape down here which was shared with me by other teachers. What we're going to do today is make our first shape from scratch. So in order to make a new shape, all we have to do is go up to this create button here and do document. Then it's going to give you this dialog to name your document. I'm just going to name this first part, and I'm going to create the public document. Now when you create parts in the future, it's very important that you give them a name that makes sense so that when I go on to grade it, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be looking at. So here is the Onshape interface. It's probably overwhelming to see at first because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of things to click on, and there's a lot of things that maybe look new to you, and that's okay. We're going to take this one step at a time. Let's start by first talking about the sections of the screen here. Up at the top, we have our toolbar. And this is where we see a majority of our strange looking buttons. And you can hover over these and it will tell you what they do. We will learn these in the future, but for today, we're not going to touch most of these. This is your toolbar up at the top. You also have buttons to go back and go forward, undo, and redo. And I like to use the keyboard shortcuts here, Control Z to go back and Control Y to redo. Over on the left hand side, this is what I like to call the browser, and this shows you all of the features that exist in your current part, all of the small little features. You can select them individually by clicking on them. As you can see, I have all three of those planes selected, and I can click off of them to deselect them. And then this large area here is our work area, where we can see a 3D representation of our work. Before we make a three-dimensional shape, it's important to understand that we have to first have a two-dimensional shape. How this computer-aided design software works and how many of the technical computer-aided design softwares work is creating three-dimensional shapes through extrusions. And extrusion might be a new word for you if you have had some computer-aided design kind of experience in the past. You may have heard this word before, but I'll explain it to you. What an extrusion is, it is when we take a two-dimensional shape and create a three-dimensional shape from it. Here's an example. If you've ever made cookies around the holidays or for any occasion, sometimes you'll make cookies using a device where you load the cookie dough into it and you squeeze the cookie dough out. And you may be able to have different tips that you can attach to this. For example, you could put the shape of a star on the tip, you squeeze it out, and then you get a three-dimensional star. You could put a circle shape on it, you squeeze it out, and you get a small cylinder. So this is the example that I want you to think about for creating these extrusions. We have to do the same thing in Onshape. So our first task here is going to be to create a 2.5-inch cube. Let's get started. Before we get a three-dimensional shape, we have to make a two-dimensional shape. I'm going to go up here to Sketch, and I'm going to click on that. What this will do is it will allow me to start making a two-dimensional drawing surface. As you can see, I have a sketch right here, but it is orange. It means sketch 1 did not generate properly. Select a sketch plane. So the first thing I need to do is to select a plane that this sketch is going to go on. Think of this sketch as like a fresh piece of paper. A piece of paper is flat, and we need to select a flat surface for this piece of paper to go onto. A good rule of thumb to use when making your first sketch for a new part is to select the front face. I can select the front face by just clicking on it like I just did. And as you can see now, we see sketch 1 up here. We get this new light blue box. And also our sketch 1 in our browser is no longer orange. Excellent. We've just created our first sketch. Good practice now would be to orient your camera so that we look at this sketch in a view that is called normal. Normal basically means we are looking at this sketch, or we are looking at this plane directly perpendicular to it from all sides. So if I go over here to my perspective cube, I can select a new view. I'm going to click on the front, and I'm going to use my mouse wheel to zoom out. And as you can see, we are now normal to sketch 1. If you had, for example, clicked on the back, this also looks okay because it looks like we are normal, but as you can see up here, sketch 1 is reversed. We are actually looking at the back side of this sketch. That's a mistake that some of you will make, and you'll have to try to avoid. So you'll know you're in the right spot if it says sketch 1 up here and you can read it. All right. So the next thing we need to do is create our shape. Now think about it. If we're going to make a cube, what 2D shape do we have to start with? And you're probably going to guess we are going to start with a square. So let's go ahead and make a square. Head up here to your toolbar, and you will see that we have this corner rectangle tool. Now if you click on the down arrow next to it, it will give you other options. There's a corner rectangle and a center point rectangle. We are going to choose the corner rectangle. And where I'm going to start this is right at the origin. You can see that we have an origin in our list of features. And you may have learned this in math in the past. The origin essentially is the very center, the 0, 0, 0 of your graph. So this is where we'd like to start. Let's click down one time. And now we can drag this rectangle out. We can go up and to the right. We can go any direction that we would want. And you can see as I drag this out, our measurements get larger and larger. Now I could try and get really technical here and slide it so it says exactly perfect 2.5, 2.5, but it's just going to be a losing battle. It's going to be too tough, and that's just going to get really annoying really fast. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop this out here, click down again. Even though my measurements are wrong, once I click down, I can tell this exactly what I want the measurements to be. So you can see right now that I have this white box around one of our measurements. That means we are editing that measurement currently. So I'm going to go to my keyboard and type in 2.5 and hit enter. And watch what happens when I hit enter. We get the 2.5 measurement, and then we jump over to the next measurement. We have the white box around it. That means we're editing it, and we're going to type 2.5 once again. All right. One thing to note here is that I still have the rectangle tool selected. Now, if I just hit escape on my keyboard, the top left button on your keyboard, I will deselect that. And I can even go through and move these dimension lines. And these dimension lines are exactly that. They're just dimension lines. These aren't a part of your sketch. They're just trying to tell you, hey, this is this far. So now that I've got my sketch finished, I can go up here to my green check mark, and that will finish the sketch. Now you'll notice that after I hit that green check mark, my toolbar changes a little bit. And this is because we're now in three-dimensional editing mode instead of sketch mode. If I made a mistake on my sketch and I wanted to go back and change it, I would not make a new sketch. If you have a sketch on top of another sketch on the same surface, the two sketches do not know that one another exists. If I want to edit this sketch, I would go back over to my browser, right-click, and edit. And now we get this dialog box here again showing us that we are ready to edit our sketch again. But since we are done, green check mark, And I'm going to go back to my perspective cube and click on this top right corner here to go back to my view. All right, so we've got our shape. Let's go ahead and extrude this now. The extrusion button is right up here next to sketch. We'll click on that once. And we know we are in the extrusion window when this pops up. Again, we've got orange text here, which means, hey, we've got a problem. And it says it did not generate properly. Select a face. Well, we haven't selected a face yet. So the first thing we need to do is click on our face. Now there are a few options that we can change here with this extrusion. First of all, we need to change this depth. This is only 1 inch. We want this to be a 2.5 inch cube. So we need to type in 2.5 here and hit enter. Some other things that we can change are the direction. So as you can see right now, this arrow pointing towards us. I can switch this around and we can extrude it the other direction. And there are some other options up here as well that we'll talk about in the future. I'm going to hit OK. And there we have it, our 3-dimensional 2 by 2, well, 2.5 by 2.5 by 2.5 cube. And that's how we do it. If I want to get a better look at this, what if I want to see the backside? Well, I could click around my perspective cube again, or I could just click and hold my right mouse button and I can rotate this in a free rotation. If I want to slide around the screen, I can click and hold my middle mouse wheel button and slide around this way. If you're working on a laptop that does not have a mouse, I would highly encourage you to obtain a mouse that you can use for this, because there's a lot of features that you can take advantage of by having a mouse. I'm going to go back to my home view. Last thing we're going to do here is show you how to cut through something, and that also works with extrusions, but instead of adding material like we have here, we'll just remove everything in its path. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to make a hole right down the top through the center. Again, we need a 2-dimensional shape first, so we will make a new sketch. Our sketch is orange, meaning we did not select a face yet. I'm going to select this top face of my cube now. My sketch has been made. I need to go to my top view in my perspective cube. Here we go. And I'm just going to draw a circle. Here's the circle tool up on the toolbar. You can select the down arrow to choose different types. We are going to use the center point circle. I'm just going to click down once and click again. And here we get the white box, which means we are currently editing this dimension. We're going to make this 1 inch and hit enter. Now, I want this circle to be in the very dead center of my cube, but it is not. How could I fix that? Well, first of all, I need to get out of my center point circle tool. As you can see, I still have it selected because it's blue. If I hit escape, I'm now outside of that. I can try to move this around by clicking and dragging on it. I could get it close, but how do I know that this is exactly in the center? The way that we fix this is by using the dimension tool, which is D on your keyboard. This one right here. What the dimension tool does is it allows you to tell two features how far apart they should be. So let's do that. I'm going to click on the dimension tool. Again, the shortcut would be D on your keyboard. And I want the very center of this circle to be half the distance across. So I'm going to click on the center. I'm going to click on the edge. And here you see we've got a dimension. And how far apart should this be? Well, what is halfway to 2.5 inches? You could do the math in your head, or you could do the math right here inside of this window. If we just type in 2.5 divided by, which is the /2, and hit enter, it will automatically do the math for us. So now we're 1.25 inches in from the right side. We also need to go from the other side. So again, I'm going to do 2.5 divided by 2. Again, you could have just typed in 1.25 as well if you know the math. Hit enter, and now this circle is in the dead center. I still have my dimension tool selected, so I'll hit escape. And if I try to move this now, I cannot, because this is what is called fully constrained. I have locked it down both in the X direction and the Y direction with dimensions. I can no longer move this shape while still adhering to the rules that I have set forth for it. Great, our circle is done. Let's finish our sketch by hitting the green check mark. Let's go back to our perspective view. I'm actually going to go to the other side, so I'm just going to navigate around here. And I want to extrude this down. Keep in mind, the camera movements that I was making up here are purely preference. You can select whatever view you want when editing in 3D. All right, so let's go back to our extrusion tool. As you can see, it automatically selected our face, which was great. But this isn't what we want. We don't want a cylinder coming out the top of our cube. We want to cut through this. And it looks like something happened here. We need to go over to solid instead of surface. Okay, so we were on surface. We want to go to solid. And as you can see, it deselected again. We have orange text, meaning we have to select again. So there we go. We've selected it. Again, we're on solid, on an extrusion, and we have this cylinder coming up. We don't want that. We actually want this to go in through the cube and cut it. So instead of add here, we're going to go to remove, and I'm going to hold my right mouse button to get a better look, and this will cut in, but it's not going to cut all the way through. As you can see, it's only going to go to here. There are two ways to solve this. I could select a depth of 2.5 inches, which is fine. But what I prefer to do is to change the end type from blind to through all, which means whatever's in its way, it's just going to cut it. I'll hit the green check mark, hold right click on my mouse, and there we go. We've got a hole through our cube. Excellent. So everything that we have learned in this lesson today is going to cover what you need to know to start making some three-dimensional parts in Onshape. If you're wondering if you need to save your document before you exit, you don't. Since this is a cloud-based software, all of your changes are automatically saved, but good practice would be to go up to the document menu here and hit close document when finished. And there we go. Now I have my first part here. As you can see, the picture on the side doesn't have the hole going through it, and that's just because sometimes it's a little bit behind. If you were to wait 5 minutes and refresh this page, you would definitely see that hole through the middle and all of your updates that you have made. And that's it for this video. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions at all, and we'll see you in the next video.